There are things that happen inside professional sports that never make it to the highlight reel. Things that happen in tunnels, in locker rooms, in dugouts when the cameras are pointed elsewhere. Conversations that are never supposed to leave the building. Moments that players carry quietly because the culture of the game demands silence. But sometimes, the evidence surfaces anyway. And when it does, it doesn't just change the story of a game or a series. It changes the story of an entire sport. What was captured on that video should never have happened. Not in a clubhouse. Not in a dugout. Not anywhere inside a professional sports organization that operates under the banner of Major League Baseball. Two words are echoing across the baseball world right now. 2 months. And the players who thought their words would stay hidden are learning the hardest possible lesson about what happens when the truth refuses to stay quiet. In the age of smartphones and stadium surveillance, the idea that anything can truly stay private inside a professional sports environment is already fragile. Players know this. Coaches know this. Organizations know this. And yet, somehow, what was captured on this video was said anyway. The footage, once released, spread across every platform simultaneously. Within minutes, it had been viewed millions of times. Within an hour, it had become the only story in baseball. By the time the sun set that evening, the commissioner's office had already been briefed, legal teams had already been activated, and 2 of the Diamondbacks' most prominent players were sitting in a room they did not want to be in, facing questions they had never prepared to answer. The words spoken in that video were not ambiguous. They were not taken out of context. They were not the kind of thing that can be explained away by competitive frustration or locker room culture or the heat of the moment. They were a direct, personal attack on Shohei Ohtani's nationality. "We hate Japanese players like Shohei." 5 words. 11 syllables. And enough weight to bring an entire organization to its knees. Before examining what happened next, it is important to sit with what was actually said and why it matters as much as it does. Professional sports have long operated with an unspoken tolerance for a certain level of psychological warfare. Trash talk. Competitive intimidation. The kind of verbal edge that players use to gain mental advantages over opponents. This is understood. This is accepted as part of the culture. What was captured in that video is not any of those things. Targeting a player's nationality is not competitive intimidation. It is not trash talk. It is not the unwritten language of baseball rivalry. It is discrimination. It is the use of someone's identity, their heritage, their background, the country they come from and the culture they carry, as a weapon against them. And in a sport that markets itself globally, that actively recruits from Japan, South Korea, Latin America, and every corner of the baseball world, that kind of language is not just offensive on a personal level. It is a direct contradiction of everything the league publicly claims to stand for. The 2 players involved are not rookies who don't understand the weight of their words. They are established professionals. Veterans of the game. Men who have been in locker rooms long enough to know exactly where the line is. They crossed it deliberately. And the league's response confirmed that interpretation. What makes this situation more disturbing is that the video was not an isolated incident. According to multiple sources close to the situation, what was captured on that footage was the visible surface of a pattern of behavior that had been building across multiple games in the series. The video was the moment it broke into the open. But the behavior itself had been ongoing. Players on the field had noticed. Umpires had picked up on the tension without fully understanding its source. Members of the Dodgers organization had been aware that something was wrong, that Ohtani was absorbing something beyond normal competitive pressure, without knowing the full scope of what was happening. The bullying, as it has now been characterized by multiple independent observers, went beyond words spoken in a single moment. It was calculated. It was repeated. And it was specifically designed to get inside the head of a player who is almost impossible to unsettle through conventional means. Think about what that tells you about the intent. When you want to throw off Shohei Ohtani, you cannot do it by throwing him difficult pitches. You cannot do it by playing aggressive defense. You cannot do it through strategy or preparation or execution, because he has seen all of it and handled all of it. So someone made a decision to go somewhere darker. To try to use his identity, the one thing that no amount of preparation or discipline can change, as the point of attack. It didn't work in the way they intended. But it revealed something about them that no competitive result can cover. Here is what the baseball world needs to understand about Shohei Ohtani's response to what happened. He did not collapse. He did not retreat. He did not allow what was being directed at him to pull him away from what he was there to do. Those who were close to the situation and observed Ohtani during the period when this behavior was occurring describe a player who was clearly aware of what was happening, who processed it in real time, and who made a conscious decision not to let it become the story while it was unfolding. That kind of mental control is not natural. It is constructed over years of deliberate work. It is the same discipline that allows him to step into a World Baseball Classic final with an entire nation watching and execute without trembling. It is the same internal architecture that makes him the most complete player in the sport. But there is a difference between control and acceptance. And Ohtani never accepted what was happening. When the evidence surfaced and the video became public, those close to him describe a man who was not surprised by what was revealed. He knew. He had always known. What the video did was simply make visible what he had already been carrying. And in the aftermath, as the story exploded across every platform and every broadcast desk, Ohtani returned to his routine. His preparation. His work. Because that is what he does. And nobody, no matter what they say or what language they use to say it, has ever managed to change that. The league did not move slowly on this. Within 24 hours of the video becoming public, the commissioner's office had launched a formal investigation. Within 48 hours, interviews had been conducted with players, coaches, and staff members from both organizations. Within 72 hours, the findings had been compiled and reviewed at the highest levels of the league's leadership structure. The conclusion was unambiguous. What had occurred was a violation of Major League Baseball's policies on discrimination and workplace conduct. The behavior was characterized not as a momentary lapse but as a pattern. The evidence, between the video itself and the testimony gathered during the investigation, was described by sources familiar with the process as extensive and clear. The punishment was announced without hesitation. 2 months. Suspended. Quarantined from all team activities. Both players. Simultaneously. Effective immediately. In the context of a baseball season, a 2-month suspension is not a slap on the wrist. It is a significant portion of competitive time. It carries financial implications. It carries reputational consequences that extend well beyond the current season. It signals to every player in every organization in the league exactly where the boundaries are and what happens when they are crossed. The speed of the decision mattered as much as the decision itself. The league was sending a message, and it wanted that message delivered without ambiguity or delay. Inside the Diamondbacks organization, the fallout was immediate and severe. Management released a public statement within hours of the suspension announcement. The language was careful but unequivocal. The behavior did not reflect the values of the organization. The players involved did not represent what the franchise stood for. Steps were being taken internally to review culture and conduct at every level of the organization. Whether those words are believed, and whether they translate into genuine structural change, remains to be seen. But what was visible immediately was the impact on the team itself. A locker room that had been competitive and focused suddenly had to navigate an entirely different kind of pressure. Players who had no involvement in the incident were now answering questions about it in every post-game session. Coaches who had been preparing for baseball were suddenly managing a crisis. The 2 suspended players cleared out their spaces quietly. There were no dramatic exits. No public statements from them beyond the brief, managed apologies that their representatives prepared. No acknowledgement of the full scope of what they had done. Just absence. And the uncomfortable silence that follows when people who should have known better are suddenly removed from the room. The response from across baseball was swift and, unusually for a sport that often moves cautiously on social issues, almost entirely unified. Current players spoke out in numbers that surprised even veteran observers of the sport. Veterans who had spent entire careers carefully avoiding controversy made statements. International players, particularly those from Japan and other Asian countries who understood on a personal level exactly what the language in that video meant and why it mattered, spoke with a directness and emotion that cut through the usual diplomatic language of professional athlete statements. The message from across the sport was consistent. This is not who we are. This is not what this game is. And this cannot be tolerated. The reaction from Japan was significant in its own right. Coverage of the incident dominated sports broadcasts. Former players, analysts, and ordinary fans expressed a combination of anger and solidarity. Ohtani's status in Japan transcends baseball. He is a cultural symbol, a point of national pride, a daily reminder of what Japanese excellence looks like on the world stage. The attack on his nationality was not just an attack on a baseball player. It was understood by millions of people as something larger than that. And the baseball world's response, in its speed and its unity, sent a message back across the Pacific. We see it. We hear it. And we are not going to minimize it. 2 players are suspended. An organization is in crisis. A league has drawn a line in public and put its name behind it. But the most important question going forward is not about suspensions or investigations or organizational statements. It is about whether this moment changes anything in a lasting way. Baseball is a sport with a deep and complicated relationship with its own culture. The unwritten rules. The traditions. The things that happen inside organizations that never reach the public. Change in those environments does not come from a single incident, no matter how significant. It comes from sustained pressure, consistent accountability, and a genuine shift in what is considered acceptable by the people inside the game. This incident has the potential to accelerate that shift. The speed of the investigation, the severity of the punishment, and the breadth of the response from across the sport all suggest that the momentum is real. But momentum requires maintenance. The players in minor league systems watching this story unfold are learning something about consequences right now. The veterans in locker rooms across the league are having conversations they might not have had otherwise. The organizations reviewing their own internal cultures are doing so with a sharpness that this moment has made newly relevant. Whether that translates into genuine, lasting change is the question that will take years to answer. Shohei Ohtani will take the field again. He will step into the batter's box with the same quiet intensity he has always brought. He will prepare with the same meticulous discipline. He will perform at the same impossible standard. He will bow respectfully after games and speak carefully in interviews and go home and do exactly what he has always done. Because nothing that was said to him, nothing that was directed at his nationality or his identity or his background, has the power to change who he is or what he has built. That is the final irony of what those 2 players attempted. They thought targeting his identity would destabilize him. Instead, the most stable thing in this entire story, from the moment the video surfaced to the moment the suspensions were announced, has been Ohtani himself. Still preparing. Still working. Still the standard. The 2-month suspension will eventually end. The players involved will attempt, in whatever way they choose, to rebuild what they have damaged. But the standard that Ohtani represents, the daily discipline, the consistent excellence, the quiet dignity that made him a target in the first place, that doesn't go anywhere. It just keeps raising the bar. And right now, the entire baseball world is watching to see who is capable of meeting it.